Hey guys, Fred here. This week I received a special request. My wife is making gifts for her coworkers and one of them has a kid who loves symbiotes, Venom in particular. So, let's get started. So I am using Clip Studio Paint. I mainly use 4 tools, the mechanical pencil for sketching, with very low stabilization it feels very close to pencil and paper. Then I use the G-Pen tool for line art. Number 3 is a tool I got from the Clip Studio Assets menu. It is a select and fill tool. It will find any enclosed area within the selection and fill those with the color you have selected. And last, but not the least, is a custom watercolor brush I made. With high pressure it works like a marker and fills in very well. With low pressure it blends, and with very low pressure I can blend color without adding any color. Super useful. I used a magic wand tool to select his symbol and his eyes, then I filled them with a white base coat. Unfortunately, because my lines were not complete, I had to manually paint some of the base coat. I repeated the process for his teeth. In some instances, I could use a select tool to fill the color, in others, I had to paint them manually. Learn from me kids, do better line art. Whenever possible, try to close your lines to make life easier. As I mentioned earlier, my customized watercolor brush changes function depending on pressure. It is a combination of 3 free brushes I downloaded from the Clip Studio Assets menu. I made it via trial and error, and you can make your own too. I first created a new layer and set it to multiply. Then I lower the opacity to around 30% before choosing a color for shading. Typically, I use dark red, but for Venom I went with black. Try experimenting with different colors yourself. Now that we've gone over some tips and tricks, let's take a look at the character art we created. This is the quintessential Venom side pose. When I first started shading this piece, my wife remarked that it looked awesome with just dark shading in the eyes and teeth. She wondered if there was a character like that already, which led me down a rabbit hole about anti-venom. Look it up, it's pretty interesting. After the painting was finished, I added some comic book-like texture. The second drawing was just a frontal view. I wanted to make it interesting though, and seem like Venom was charging. It was quite comical when I realized that he looked like he was walking each time I flipped the canvas to check for symmetry. You may or may not see me making him strut a few times during this video. As many of you already know, I am colorblind, so unfortunately I grabbed something I thought was grayish purple, but it was actually Barney purple. Luckily, my wife pointed it out and I was able to pick another shade. I went back and added some purple highlights. I also added more details, and a lot of extra veins. I really liked the texture filter, so I applied it to all the subsequent paintings as well. Who is Venom without his arch-nemesis, Spider-Man? Well, I didn't want Spider-Man to steal the show, so I decided to put him in a less than flattering position. It looks like he had a rough night out. I typically do one rough sketch, another slightly less rough sketch, and then a somewhat final line art, and then my wife points out it would take less time to do a clean line art layer than to fix the quote-unquote final one. And of course I do a 4th line art. The endless line art drove my wife up a wall, but she came to understand that it was part of my process, even if it slows down production time. It was far more challenging to paint this scene, mainly because there were more colors and Spider-Man's suit is so detailed, when compared to the symbiote suit. I would rather draw teeth all day than tiny webs. This one I would say is my least favorite painting. I feel like I didn't do the foreshortening correctly. And his head looks like Homer Simpson at some point during the sketch. It was a challenge to make his jaw appear amongst the dark of the suit. I did what I could, and I still like it, but I'm not exactly in love with it. Hopefully my wife does something cool with it. This one is my wife's favorite. She wasn't too sure about the rest of these Venom paintings, but the minute she saw the first sketch, she fell in love with it. I almost got jealous. It turns out, she is also a huge Venom fan. She still has her old action figure from the 90s. She says Carnage was a little too wild for her taste. This girl grew up watching Spider-Man with her brothers and she made me watch the entire animated series. I had some difficulties trying to determine his head size and angle. I adjusted it several times during each step of the process. Thankfully, the rest of the line art went smoothly, probably because my wife was so hyped up and I had to impress her. The painting was also much more entertaining. Of course, I also added the comic texture to it. I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed creating it. I'll post the final project somewhere in the description once my wife is finished with it. Thanks for sticking around. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Please like and subscribe.